What if the man standing before the judge today wasn't a criminal, but a forgotten hero? The courtroom doors creak open, and a hush sweeps through the room. Every head turns. A tall, thin man steps inside, his coat torn, his boots caked with mud, his hands trembling as if fighting the cold that never leaves him. His eyes stay fixed on the ground, and his shoulders sag under the invisible weight of years. The bailiff calls his name softly, almost with hesitation. Daniel Carter. The sound echoes. He doesn't look up. Not yet. Behind the bench, Judge Frank Caprio lowers his glasses and studies the man carefully. Something about him, the posture, the silence, the pain, feels different. The usual firmness in the judge's face fades, replaced by quiet concern. The courtroom is so still, you could hear a heartbeat. Even the sound of the paper rustling on the judge's desk feels loud. People whispered to each other, "Who is he? What happened to him?" Then Daniel finally lifts his head. His eyes, tired, red, but still alive, meet Judge Caprio's. And in that moment, the judge blinks as if he's seen a ghost. "Mr. Carter," he says softly, "where have you been sleeping?" Daniel's lips part, but no words come out, just a faint, broken breath. The silence stretches like a wound. Friends, if you were in that courtroom, you'd feel it too, that heavy, aching pause before the truth breaks loose. Because sometimes the most powerful stories don't begin with noise. They begin with silence. And on this morning in Providence, that silence was about to make Judge Caprio cry. The morning light poured through the tall windows of Judge Caprio's courtroom, spreading across the polished wood and casting long, quiet beams on the faces of everyone inside. It was the kind of light that made everything feel exposed, honest, unhidden. And standing right in the center of it was Daniel Carter, a man who looked like he hadn't stood in front of anyone in a very long time. His clothes were clean enough to show effort, but worn enough to reveal struggle. His hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion, the kind that comes from sleeping on park benches and trying to stay warm with nothing but memory. A few strands of gray hair curled over his forehead, and his eyes, though tired, carried a weight that silence could barely hold. Judge Caprio adjusted his glasses again, studying the man before him. He could tell right away this wasn't a troublemaker. This was someone carrying something deeper. The courtroom, usually filled with laughter or small talk between cases, now sat in total stillness. Even the sound of a chair creaking felt like a disturbance. Daniel's voice, when it finally came, was soft and uncertain. "Good morning, Your Honor." "Good morning, Mr. Carter. You're here for a parking violation, is that right?" Daniel nodded once. "Yes, sir. I was sleeping in my car." The judge leaned forward slightly, his expression thoughtful. "Sleeping in your car?" he repeated, his tone quiet but searching. "Why there, Mr. Carter?" There was no immediate answer, only a flicker of shame in Daniel's eyes, followed by a small, trembling breath. Outside, the traffic of Providence hummed faintly, distant and unaware of the life unfolding inside this courtroom. The bailiff watched silently, as did the few people seated in the back rows. Judge Caprio rested his hands on the bench, voice softening even more. "Take your time," he said. "You're safe here." And for the first time that morning, Daniel Carter looked up, not at the ceiling, not at the floor, but straight at the judge. The light caught his eyes, and something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, humanity, and the beginning of truth. Judge Caprio tilted his head slightly, his eyes narrowing, not in judgment, but in quiet concern. "Mr. Carter, why were you sleeping in your car? Are you between homes right now?" Daniel hesitated. His hands tightened on the edge of the podium, the knuckles whitening. For a moment, he seemed to debate whether to answer at all. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, the kind that forces people to lean in just to hear. I don't really have a home right now, Your Honor." The words hung in the air. No one moved. The bailiff looked down, pretending to read his notes. A woman in the back quietly wiped a tear from her eye. Judge Caprio leaned back slightly, taking a slow breath. How long has that been the case? Daniel swallowed hard. A few years, he said. Since I came back. Back from where? There it was, the question that changed the air in the room. Daniel's eyes flickered, and for the first time his posture straightened just a bit, as if remembering something sacred. He said, I served in the army. He said simply, I was deployed overseas. The judge nodded slowly. You're a veteran. Yes, sir. 12 years. There was pride in the words, but no boast. It wasn't the kind of pride that demanded recognition. It was the kind that comes from surviving things most people can't imagine. And when you came back? The judge asked softly. Daniel's gaze shifted to the floor again. He said, things were different. My wife, she got sick while I was away. I couldn't get home in time. His voice caught. I missed her funeral. A ripple of emotion spread through the courtroom. Someone audibly exhaled, a sound closer to a sob than a sigh. Daniel went on quietly, almost talking to himself. After that, I couldn't keep steady work. Too much noise up here, he said, tapping his temple lightly. Too many nights that never really ended. The judge listened in silence, his expression softening with every word. Do you get any help? From the VA or anyone? Daniel shook his head. I tried. Paperwork, waiting lists. It just got too hard. I stopped asking. He didn't sound bitter. He didn't even sound angry. Just tired. Like a man who had run out of places to go and words to use. The judge took off his glasses, cleaning them slowly. It was his way of buying time, a quiet ritual when emotion threatened to break through. He looked up again. Mr. Carter, he said gently, you've been through a lot. Daniel nodded once, almost apologetically. We all got our stories, sir. Mine's just a little longer than most. That simple sentence, calm, humble, uncomplaining, filled the courtroom with something words can't describe. Every person watching knew they were in the presence of quiet strength, the kind that doesn't shout or demand attention, but stands tall in its own brokenness. And Judge Caprio, usually so quick with compassion and wit, found himself speechless, because beneath Daniel Carter's silence wasn't defeat, it was dignity. And that realization made the judge's heart ache in a way few cases ever had. Judge Caprio tilted his head slightly, his eyes narrowing not in judgment but in quiet concern. Mr. Carter, why were you sleeping in your car? Are you between homes right now? Daniel hesitated. His hands tightened on the edge of the podium, the knuckles whitening. For a moment, he seemed to debate whether to answer at all. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, the kind that forces people to lean in just to hear. I don't really have a home right now, Your Honor. The words hung in the air. No one moved. Daniel swallowed hard. He said, a few years. Back from where? I served in the army, he said simply. I was deployed overseas. You're a veteran. Yes, sir. 12 years. There was pride in the words, but no boast. Daniel's gaze shifted to the floor again. He said, things were different. My wife, she got sick while I was away. I couldn't get home in time. Daniel went on quietly, almost talking to himself. After that, I couldn't keep steady work. Too much noise up here, he said, tapping his temple lightly. Too many nights that never really ended. He didn't sound bitter. He didn't even sound angry. Just tired. Like a man who had run out of places to go and words to use. He looked up again. Mr. Carter, he said gently, you've been through a lot. Daniel nodded once, almost apologetically. We all got our stories, sir. Mine's just a little longer than most. That simple sentence,
calm, humble, uncomplaining, filled the courtroom with something words can't describe. Every person watching knew they were in the presence of quiet strength, the kind that doesn't shout or demand attention, but stands tall in its own brokenness. And Judge Caprio, usually so quick with compassion and wit, found himself speechless, because beneath Daniel Carter's silence wasn't defeat, it was dignity. And that realization made the judge's heart ache in a way few cases ever had. Judge Caprio tilted his head slightly, his eyes narrowing not in judgment but in quiet concern. "Mr. Carter, why were you sleeping in your car? Are you between homes right now?" Daniel held back. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the edge of the podium. For a moment, he appeared—
"Mr. Carter," the judge said gently, "you mentioned you served in the army. Where were you stationed?" Daniel hesitated. "Iraq, sir. Mosul, mostly. 2 tours. That's a long time to be away from home." Daniel gave a faint smile. "Yes, sir. Too long." "Did you come back in one piece?" "Physically, yes, sir. But some pieces don't come back, sir. Some stay over there." "Were you injured?" Daniel rubbed his shoulder. "Just shrapnel. I was lucky." "And when you came home, your family was here?" "My wife, Emily. She used to teach. She was my world." The judge's voice softened. "Used to?" Daniel exhaled. "She got sick while I was deployed. I missed her funeral." The courtroom fell silent. Daniel's voice grew quieter. "After that, I didn't really care where I ended up. I tried to work, but the noise, it didn't stop. The VA said it was PTSD. The pills made me feel numb, so I stopped taking them." He laughed faintly. "I thought sleeping in my car would help. At least it was mine." "How long have you been living like this?" 3 years. The number hit everyone like a blow. Caprio leaned back, steadying himself. "You don't owe anyone an apology," he said softly. "You've given more than most ever will." Daniel looked up, his voice shaking. "I'm not looking for sympathy, Your Honor. I just want to feel useful again. I don't want pity. I just want to matter somewhere." Caprio couldn't speak for a moment. The room felt like a church. Finally, he said, "You already matter. You mattered when you wore that uniform. You matter right now, standing here, telling the truth." Daniel blinked, tears finally breaking free. "Thank you, sir." Daniel stood still at the podium, his gaze drifting beyond the courtroom walls. It was our 3rd night outside Mosul. We were running recon. 12 of us. They said it was quiet. Quiet doesn't always mean safe. He paused. Around midnight, we saw a house, lights flickering, maybe civilians, maybe not. I stepped inside, smelled fuel, then a flash. I swallowed. When I woke up, everything was dust. I kept calling their names, but they didn't answer. 12 men, 11 gone. I was the only one they pulled out. The words hit hard. They told me to be grateful to be alive, but all I could think was, why me? They had families. His voice trembled. I sent letters, promised I'd visit, but I couldn't face them. When I came home, everything looked normal. People laughing. But I couldn't hear it the same. Every sound made me jump. Every night I saw their faces. Not angry, just waiting. His eyes glistened. I thought maybe I was supposed to stay broken, as a reminder of what happens when good men survive the wrong things. The judge's jaw clenched. Daniel sighed. "So yeah, maybe I broke a rule sleeping in that park. But I wasn't hiding from the law. I was hiding from the noise." And in that fragile silence, everyone realized something profound. The ticket, the fine, the legal system, none of it could measure what this man had already paid. For a long while, Judge Caprio said nothing. He set his pen down slowly, as though marking the end of distance. "Mr. Carter," he said, softly, "I've been on this bench a long time. I've seen anger, defiance, regret, but what I see in you is something different. I see courage that's still standing, even after the world forgot to salute it." His voice trembled. "My father told me once that justice isn't punishment, it's mercy. And today, I understand more than I wish I did." His eyes glistened. "You went to war for people you'll never meet, and now you're punished for trying to rest your head where the night let you breathe." Those words, homeless veteran, should never sit side by side. He blinked away tears. "You've given this country more than most ever will. And I can't undo what life has done to you, but what I can do is remind you that your story isn't over." His voice broke slightly. "You served this nation with honor. Let me serve you now with compassion." The courtroom was silent. It no longer felt like a courtroom, it felt like a sanctuary. And as Caprio wiped his eyes, everyone knew they were witnessing justice redefined by mercy. Judge Caprio looked down at the file one last time, then closed it gently. "Mr. Carter," he said, "I've read your file. I've heard your story. You don't need a fine, you need a chance." Daniel blinked. Caprio continued, "The charge against you is hereby dismissed." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. "I'm not dismissing it out of pity. I'm dismissing it because no law written by man can measure what you've already given. You've paid enough." Daniel's hands trembled. "And I'm going to do something else. I'm personally donating to the Veterans Assistance Program in your name. And I want every person who hears this to remember your name. Daniel Carter." The audience rose, clapping softly, then louder, until the room echoed with respect. Daniel tried to speak, but his voice broke. The judge smiled. "Don't thank me. You've done enough thanking in your life. Now it's time for us to thank you." He turned to the clerk. "We'll arrange assistance, housing, counseling. He's not leaving this courtroom alone." The room erupted again. Applause, tears, and something pure. Daniel pressed his hands over his face as years of pain poured out. Judge Caprio stood. "Justice isn't about how much we punish. It's about how much we care." And in that moment, the man once invisible was seen again. Weeks passed, but the echo didn't fade. The story of the homeless veteran who made a judge cry spread across the nation. Donations poured in. Daniel Carter found himself surrounded by strangers who cared. The Veterans Assistance Program gave him a place to stay, but Daniel asked for only one thing: a way to give back. Within months, he worked at a shelter for veterans, fixing beds, listening to stories that sounded like his own. "You're not alone anymore," he'd tell them. Cameras caught up to him one day. His eyes were clearer. "The judge didn't just dismiss a ticket. He gave me back my dignity." Months later, back in the same courtroom, Judge Caprio invited him as a guest speaker. They shook hands, and then Caprio pulled him into an embrace. "You gave this country everything," he whispered. "The least we can do is give you a home." Daniel nodded, tears of peace in his eyes. The story had come full circle, not about punishment, but about redemption, reminding everyone that one act of kindness can rebuild a life. Sometimes, friends, the most powerful moments don't happen on battlefields or in grand speeches. They happen in small courtrooms between two strangers who choose compassion over judgment. What you witnessed today wasn't just the story of Daniel Carter. It was a reminder that behind every quiet face, there's a story we haven't heard yet. Think about that. How many people pass us every day, carrying invisible wounds? And yet, all it takes is one act of understanding to pull someone back from the edge. Judge Caprio didn't just dismiss a ticket. He rebuilt a man's faith in people. So, friends, if this story touched your heart, share it. because someone out there needs to believe the world still cares. Leave a comment below. Tell us what justice means to you. And remember, empathy is free, but it can save a life. And next time, another visitor will walk into Judge Caprio's courtroom, and what he confesses will leave even the judge speechless. Stay with us. The next story will shake your soul.